Hey guys, it's Tahira, and today I'm talking about all of the best books that I read in the year of 2024. So I actually only have 6 books to talk about, and they're not even all 5 stars. If you have been following me at all, even for like a little bit, I've talked about this so many times, but I only have 1 5-star from this year, which is actually so terrible. I think after I gave that first 5-star, I think I just got super in my head about like what a 5-star is and what I'm looking for in a 5-star, that I kind of got, I think, too scared to give any other book 5-star for some reason. And it's like, I don't even know like what's going on, but I'm positive that it's just like a mental thing, because I feel like if I read my 1 5-star now, I would be so in my head about it and I wouldn't end up giving it a 5-star, even though I have solidly like kept it at a 5-star since I read it. But other than my 1 5-star, the other books are like really high 4 stars, and books that I probably would have given 5 stars in like a regular year, but this year for some reason I like had a lot of books that I probably would have given 5 stars, but I was like, no, I can't give it 5 stars. So I ended up giving these books like 4 to 4.5 stars, and they're still like really good in my eyes compared to like my reading this year. Honestly, my reading has been so bad this year for some reason. I have definitely read more than previous years, but my average rating according to Fable for this year so far is a 3.1, which is so bad, and I don't know when it got that low. I don't think it's ever been that low, and I don't know if it's just because I've been picking up books that I haven't really been enjoying. I feel like diversified my reading taste a lot more this year, just in terms of genres, and that may be why, because I'm still trying to figure out, as I'm like growing into adulthood, like what type of books that I really like to enjoy. And I feel like there's gonna be growing pains in that, of like reading a bunch of books that I don't enjoy in order to find like what I do enjoy. But I have 6 books to talk about today of the ones that stand out to me that I read this year. So the very first book is actually my 5-star of the year, and that is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This is my first Ashley Poston book, and I had just heard so many good things about this one. This one I actually read because it was one of the most popular books I had seen around in 2023, and I decided to read those books for a video, and I'm so glad that I did, because I don't know if I would ever have, it would have probably taken me a lot longer to pick it up, but I'm so glad that I did, because obviously it's like my only 5-star of the year. So this book is about a woman named Clementine who is a book publicist. She's really like involved in her work is like a lot of her life, and she really tries to stay like practical and grounded, and she inherits her like aunt's apartment after her aunt has passed away. And this apartment is like sort of has a magical aspect to it that she has never really seen, but one day she walks into this apartment and she sees this like random guy there who claims that he's living there for like the summer. And she realizes that she is actually 7 years in the past. So he only exists in this apartment in this time period, and once she leaves, she's back in her own timeline. So he's not there anymore, and he exists in her timeline. He's just off doing something else. And so it follows their like sort of story as they sort of meet only in this apartment, and it follows their relationship as well as like their lives and their personalities outside of that. One of the first things I noticed that I really loved while I was reading this book is the writing. The writing in this is just so beautiful, and especially because the male main character, Ewan, is a chef. So the way he talks about food and the way that food is described, not just in like the sense and the aromas and the taste, but also like how it means so much to people around the world, how it brings people together, how it builds communities, and how it's more than just like what you're actually eating. Like food means so much more than that, and just the conversations around that I thought were really beautiful. I also really thought the conversations around like timing, and obviously because like they deal a lot with time, since she's going 7 years in the past, sometimes when she's in this apartment, it follows a lot about like what it means to be like at the right timing and how timing affects your life. and just conversations around that. And I don't know, like, it's been a while since I've read this book, but those things just really stick out to me about like why I really enjoyed it. And I do think about this book every now and then, which I feel like is a good sign of a book. But yeah, one of my favorite things about this book is definitely the writing. Even like outside of like the food aspect of it, I just thought that the way it was written was really, really beautiful. The plot was emotional, and it was also bittersweet and deep, and I don't know, I just really, really enjoyed my time reading this book, and like its plot and its messaging has stuck with me since I have read it. The next book is a 4-star book for me, but it is a book that I think about often. Like the one thing that is in common with all these books is that even if I gave a book 4.5 stars, they have stuck with me in some way, and that I think about even after I read them. Like I've given a lot more other 4 stars throughout the year, but there are just some books that are 4 stars that I don't think about after I read them. But these books are all books that I've thought about. And one of the books is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This is a sci-fi novel that I read because I was doing a video where I was reading other booktubers recommendations, and this recommendation I got from Rachel from Raven Haired Reader. And I am so glad that I read this book because I otherwise would not have read this book at all. This is, as I said, a sci-fi book. Sci-fi is not a genre that I ever really reach for. It kind of intimidates me, I don't know, just because like space doesn't really interest me in terms of like a setting for a book. And also like I thought that the space stuff and science stuff would sort of go over my head, so I never really reached for sci-fi. But I'm so glad that I read this because this is such a charming and wholesome story. This one follows a man that I'm completely forgetting the name of, but he wakes up on this random ship after being in like a coma for several years, and he wakes up and he has no idea what he's on this ship for, but he has a mission, and he was like sort of put to sleep in order to fulfill this mission. And it's his story as he's trying to figure out like why he's on the ship and what he's supposed to be doing. And then on the way he meets this like alien. You sort of have to suspend your disbelief a little bit, but he meets this alien named Rocky, and they sort of work together to figure out what he is supposed to do. The reason this book sticks with me now is the relationship between Rocky the alien and the main character, which is like insane to say, but I don't know, their relationship is just so adorable, and it still sticks with me to this day. Like I love Rocky so much, and I will just do anything for him. He's adorable, he's sweet, he is just so charming, and I still think about him all the time. And I also thought that the story was fun. I have never really, as I said, read a sci-fi book, so I thought the plot was super interesting, and I thought the science stuff in general was just super fascinating. A lot of it did go over my head because there was like some math and like nerdy sciencey stuff being talked about, but honestly it was still super interesting to read. And even if I didn't understand everything, I still had a really great time with this. But the main reason this is on this list is because 100% because of Rocky. My next favorite book of the year is Heartless by Elsie Silver. I would never think that I would ever put a small town cowboy romance on my best books of the year, but here we are. This one is book 2 of the Chestnut Spring series, which is a series of interconnected standalone books. So they're following like different couples. This one follows Willa and Cade. Cade is a single father, and I believe his son Luke is like 5 years old, I want to say. And Willa has basically agreed to be a nanny for Luke while Cade is doing some work, and it follows their relationship. The classic single dad ex-nanny trope, and it's not something I've read ever before, but I really actually enjoyed the dynamic a lot more than I thought I would. But this one is a really sweet story. I really like the relationship between Willa and Cade, especially because Cade is a little bit more guarded, and he's obviously really protective of his son and doesn't want just anyone meeting with him. So he does take some time to open up to Willa. I will say, like, there's immediate lust in the sense of that Cade immediately finds Willa attractive from like the very first time that he sees her, but like obviously like getting closer and opening up and everything takes a little bit longer. But I really enjoyed that dynamic, and I thought that it really was worth everything that we went through for that. One of the main things I really love about this story, honestly, is the relationship between Willa and Luke. Willa is just such a caring person, and when she steps into the nanny role, she like fully steps into it. She cares for Luke so much. She gets so close to him. She's so good with kids, and she really talks to him in a way that's like not too like babyish. She really talks to him in a way that makes him feel like a human, like a person. And Cade can clearly see how much he really cares for Luke, so that's why he also helps him to open up. So I really enjoyed this book, and I think about Luke and Willa's relationship often. Like, I just think they're so adorable, and I just wish them nothing but the best. I'm scared about reading the other books now because like Heartless is so far up in my mind. Like, Heartless is so much better to me than Flawless. Like, Flawless was also good, but I think Heartless is just, I ended up giving Heartless 4.5 stars, but I don't even know, like, it could be a 5-star in a regular year. The only reason I guess I docked a star because at the end it felt a little bit too long, because it is like, I want to say 400 to 500 pages for a contemporary romance novel, and usually I don't really love my romance like contemporaries to be too long. But yeah, other than that, I really love the relationship between Cade and Willa and how it progressed, and I really love the relationship between Willa and Luke and how that progressed as well. And I just wish them a happily ever after forever and ever, and I will always be thinking about them. Then is a short story, which is actually Powerful by Lauren Roberts. This is the novella between Powerless and Reckless in the Powerless series. This one follows Adina, who is Peyton's like best friend who she was living with in like the slums, I guess, and it follows her story while Peyton is off doing like her whole trial stuff that she's doing in Powerless. It follows Adina's story while she's doing that. This is a massive spoiler for the Powerless series, but I just have to talk about it. But Adina dies in Powerless actually, and for some reason, like, I knew that she died in Powerless, but since I started reading this book, I thought that for some reason like Lauren Roberts would pull out like, oh, she's not actually dead, she like escaped and was able to save herself. But I don't know why I thought that it would go in that direction. It very much did not, and we had to experience her death all over again. Like, I still think about the fact that Lauren Roberts wrote a book and decided to be so painful with it, and we basically experienced the same character's death twice, and that is just so, it was such a heartbreaking book. It was such a heartbreaking ending, and it was probably like, I haven't really felt that emotionally affected by a death. I didn't cry or anything, like I never really cry for deaths like that in books ever, but that one was just like, ugh, it was so painful to read that again, especially from her perspective, because she's the one that's dying and the book is from her perspective. That's all I have to say. Like, that death affected me like nothing else, and I had to experience it twice, once in Powerless and once in this book, and I will never forgive Lauren Roberts for that. Then I'm going to be talking about Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. This is the newest fantasy romance obsession, I guess, out there. I guess not anymore, but there was a time where I was seeing this book everywhere. I first saw it because of Sarah Crowley's YouTube. She was in some reading vlog, and she was reading this book, and she was really raving about it, and she really enjoyed it, and for some reason it stuck with me. I didn't even plan to read this book, but when she started talking about it, it like stuck with me. It was calling to me. I read it. I really enjoyed it. It is a dark, like, gothic romantasy following Ophelia and Genevieve. They're two sisters, and their mother has just died, and they have like a huge debt on their house that they find out after their mother's death. Genevieve decides to go to this thing called Phantasma, which is this traveling circus thing. Basically, it's kind of like Carnival, but it travels all around the world. Each city, they have contestants, and they go through these 9 trials, basically based on the 9 circles of hell, and at the end you get like a devil will grant you a wish that you want, like any wish. So Ophelia follows Genevieve into this, and it's sort of following her experience through these 9 trials. Each trial is based on a different circle of hell. I really enjoyed that. I am such a trials and games girly. Like, I love trials and games and clues and riddles, like anything revolving basically games I love in a book. I just love the stakes and like the competition. A deadly competition aspect is just so enjoyable and entertaining to read for me. So I already knew I would like it somewhat going into it based on that, but I just really love the writing as well. The writing was super like dark and gothic, and it really fit with the atmosphere of the setting of the world. This is a type of book where I have like gripes with it, but I also like love it so much for some reason, and I can't really articulate why. It's just stuck with me. The book was calling to me when I was reading it. I was nonstop thinking about the book when I was reading it. Like, whenever I would put it down, I would could not stop thinking about reading it and getting back to it, and that hasn't happened to me in a long time. But yeah, I really loved the writing, the atmosphere, and the games aspect of it, and I really also love the relationship between Ophelia and Blackwell, who is this like almost Danny Phantom-esque person that she meets while she's there, and they both have their own like motives for like starting the relationship with each other. Obviously they get closer as the book goes on, and I really love their dynamic as well. Then the last book that I will be talking about is Air by Sabaa Tahir. Of course, we had to include the queen. I was actually fortunate enough to see her in person for her Air book tour. She was doing a book signing here in Seattle. So I was able to see her and get my book signed and hear her talk about like writing this book and everything. And I really loved this book. This one is it's sort of a spin-off series. It's like a new duology in the Ember universe. If you don't know, Ember in the Ashes is the other fantasy quartet, so 4 books that she wrote. That one follows a different story, different characters. Some of those characters do make cameos in this book because it's like the same world, and some of the characters are connected to some of the characters from that series, but overall this follows a completely different cast of characters. This one follows 3 characters. We have Aiz, who is trying to save her people. She's from the slums and she is in a prison. Then we have Saoirse, who is like a magical tracker, and she's not supposed to be using this power, but she kind of makes her money this way, so she helps people track down other people or objects or things. And then we have Quill, who is the crown prince of the empire, and he's also the nephew of Helene, who is a major character from the Ember in the Ashes series. So we sort of follow these 3 different perspectives as they eventually intertwine and their paths cross in many different ways, so we're following their story. This is one of the other books where I thought that all perspectives were really interesting. Like usually there's always a perspective that I don't want to go to, that I don't want to read from, that I want to like, that I'm dreading, but this one was a case where that did not happen. I was equally enjoying all of their perspectives and their stories, and I really thought it was interesting how they interacted as well. And it was actually really unexpected the way that it did, and I was not expecting that. Also, particularly Aiz's journey is terrifyingly haunting, and towards the end, like I can't stop thinking about like her journey and what she kind of, it's hard to talk about this book without spoilers, but just like if you read the book, like her journey and what sort of transpires towards the end and what she becomes, like how her character development changes throughout the book is just terrifying and haunting to read. And it's just, Sabaa Tahir did such a good job of weaving all of these perspectives together. Of course, I had my doubts going into this book because that series is so loved. It's one of my favorite series of all time, but Sabaa Tahir of course did not disappoint. I loved this so much. I can't wait for the second book, which I know is going to take a while because she usually takes a bit to like write her books, but I know it's going to be amazing. I just am really antsy about what's going to happen next because of the way things ended off. Of course, she ended it in a way that's always going to be terrifying for our characters. She's never going to write a perfectly happy ending. We already know that. But yeah, I don't know. This is not my favorite books again, because like usually books that stick out to me in some way, like this one, I can't stop thinking about a specific story, like perspective, which is Aiz's perspective, and that's really why I'm putting it on this list. Of course, the writing is beautiful, and I feel like the story is stunning, the writing is stunning, I love the characters, but I think the ability for a book to be like a favorite is really for it to stick with me after I've read it, and this has really done that. But yeah, that is it for my best books of 2024. I know it's only 6 books, but truly has been such a crazy year for me. I've been through so many like life changes in this year. I still managed to read 50 books, and although my ratings are a little bit low this year than I would hope so, I still found a few books that I have really stuck with me and that I guess consider favorites of the year that I like still continue to think about. But yeah, let me know down below what are some of your favorite books of the year, as of course I would love to know. But that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye.